eye and absorb and make sure that you can kind of figure out what I'm doing. And if you have questions along the way, I want you to like stop and ask. Okay?
Or leave a comment below.
You can see subscribe. Okay. I'll trust you. All right. So are we ready?
Yep.
Go time?
Yep. 3, 2, 1, go.
3, 2, 1, go. Okay. Like I said, I'm counting on you to review your own proportions using the video that I provided. So what I'm going to do for today is I'm going to go kind of briskly through some quick proportions, and I'm going to do them in this warm yellow, nacho cheese, orangish color so that the camera can see it. Normally I would use like a really light, even like a whited down yellow, so that I can blend it in with whatever. But with paint, it's really easy to paint over it and blend it. Okay, so right now I am looking at my top of my brush is equal with the top of the crystal ball, and the bottom of my brush is equal with the very bottom of the orange, because to me, that's the lowest item on the arrangement. Okay, so I am going to arbitrarily pick that height as here and here. Okay, now I'm going to check the width. Okay, because just looking at it, I can already tell that it is wider than it is tall. So I'm going to start with the width. I'm going from the very farthest left side of the crystal ball, and I am stopping my thumb at the very farthest right side of the teal colored wooden box. Okay, so there's the width of my whole arrangement. Here's the height. So my thumb right now is where the bottom of the orange is, and my brush is extending just ever so slightly over the top of the crystal ball. So really, did you already hear my assumption was wrong? Mm-hmm. Okay, I mean, it wasn't wrong, it was just not as right as I thought it was. So it's almost square from my perspective. I don't know how it looks from where you guys are, but from my perspective, it is almost as tall as it is wide. Okay, so that tells me I need to take this height measurement now and go this way, and I need to make it a little bit. Did you guys hear something move over there?
A click or something.
Yeah, okay, it wasn't just me. Good.
Going crazy.
Not this time. My width here is going to be just a smidge wider than it is tall. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. Here's where that's going to start, and then I'm going to move it over, and I got to do this so that I can get it down right there. Make sense how I got that? Yep. Normally, if I was going to do this for real, I would double, triple, quadruple check that. For right now, I'm just going to forge ahead. Okay, now I'm looking at the top of the green box, because to me that is another kind of major cross piece happening here. So here's my height, here's my total height of the whole arrangement, and I am now looking at where, here's my total height right there, and here is the height of the box. Okay, so that's a little bit more than half. It's not quite 2/3. Okay, so now here is my whole height, and half would be about here. So I want to go a little bit taller than that, which would be about here. Okay, and I noticed that I moved it over a little bit. If I compare the whole width, here's the whole width of the arrangement. I'll go like that. Here is how far over that goes. So it's, again, it's about a little bit more than half, maybe 2/3. So it goes to about there. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Any questions so far? Okay, based on that, okay, I've got hands on a clock. I'm looking at the top corner of that box. It's about a 2 o'clock angle from here, and this would go up from there to about there. I've got this same angle happening this way. Here's the top of the green box. I've also got, if I look at just the size of the green box, about that much of it. So about a quarter of that, if here's the whole green box, about a quarter of that, here's half, here's a quarter, which falls right under here, which means I did something right. If here's the bottom of my orange, my green box is higher than that. I'm I'm gonna go to about there. Could I proportion that out? Yes. Should I? Yes. Am I going to right now?
No.
No. Okay. There's about that. Now I've got my orange in there, which I compare. Here's the width of my whole arrangement. That orange is about a third of that. So here's the whole arrangement. Here's my thirds. Okay, so my orange is going to be about there. Okay, using my hands on a clock, I've got about a 10:30 angle. About the same on the other side, maybe about a 1 o'clock there. Okay, it's a little bit pointier on top. I've got, this is the angle for my perspective for the bottom of the crystal ball. That's about like almost flat, but not quite. And it's a little bit taller than the orange, but it's lower than this. So it's gonna go from here over to here. Okay, you guys seeing how I'm getting all this? The top of the base of the crystal ball is lower than this. Okay, I could proportion that as well. Here's the edge of the box. Here is the top of that, so this is going to be under about there. The angle coming in there is about 11 o'clock. It doesn't come out quite as far as this. So we're going to go about there, 11 o'clock angle, 11 o'clock angle the other way. There's that. I've got negative space here. I'm looking at the shape of that negative space between the orange and that. And this needs to come over a little farther, more like there. You guys have questions so far?
Comment down below.
What?
He said, any questions? And I said, comment down below.
Oh! You know, funny story about YouTube comments. So the school, something about the way the schools,
They restrict all of them.
yeah, they restrict all that, so I can't even see them in school. I have to wait till I get home. Something is not right here. Probably because I didn't proportion it all out. See what happens, people.
Feels really good.
Okay, see where I'm going with that?
Sound like your fingerprint.
I'm going to start with my lightest values first. Okay, so for me, if I squint, okay, now I squint a lot when I'm doing still life, and it's not because I can't see, it's because I need to be able to see shapes of value and shapes of color, kind of independent of what I know the objects actually are. Okay, that's deep. I hope you didn't miss that. So I'm squinting, and the lightest parts for me are kind of this part of the crystal ball because I'm looking through it. I'm focusing on what it actually is showing me through there, right? And that's going to be that yellow poster board. I'm also seeing a reflection of the lamp on the side because the lamp is close to that. I'm seeing some dotted lines from the ceiling lights in the room, which obviously when you guys do that won't be here. And then I'm seeing a little bit of like the underside of the cabinet or the ceiling, okay? So I'm gonna start with some white, and then I'm going to kind of brown that up a little bit. So I'm gonna use some red and some blue. And then I'm gonna put some yellow in there so that it kind of neutralizes. Okay, now I don't care if this color is exactly what it needs to be. I'm just getting something in there that's close. Okay? I don't know if you guys remember, if you think back to fruit drawing, and I'm paying attention to what shape that color is also taking. Okay, that's important. But think back to fruit drawing. The important part is you got to get your proportions correct, and you got to get your values correct. If you can get the way the values compare to be correct, then you can actually get away with a lot in terms of your color not being quite right. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. We will believe, that's why visual illusions and visual effects work so well. We will believe a lot as long as the highlights and shadows look like they're correct. Believe it or not. No pun intended. All right, I've got some yellow in there from the poster board. I might need somebody to make a paint run for me in a second, because I did not refresh this canvas before I did that. Now I'm looking at this shape, and for me, from where I'm sitting, most of this crystal ball is kind of the yellow poster board. But I need to ask myself, is it really the same all the way across? No, it is not. It gets a little bit lighter over on this side. You really need that, like while I'm demonstrating? Okay, then maybe put it away. And let's not be talking back there. Okay, I'm going to leave that there for now. I'm going to put in a couple of these little, at least get the effect of it in there. Hope I had enough paint on the brush. Okay, close enough for now. I know that that's not done, okay, but I'm going to come back to it. I'm going to move on for now, okay? I know I can see that I've got a highlight here and here, and then I've got some highlights down here for the stand. So I'm going to mix up kind of a warm brown color for the stand. I love how I said warm brown color and then I used all cool colors. Guess what? It's okay. Stop talking, please. There we go. Ish. Okay, so I've got this top shape. I've got the under shapes here. And then I've got the stem, which I'm trying to make sure falls right under that center point. And then it spreads out at the bottom. And I've got the base down here as well. Okay, now obviously that's pretty rough, right? You got to start somewhere. Now I'm going to add some highlights in the areas where it appears lighter, which to me is underneath that like bottom part of the stem. And then the corners. Notice I'm using like a really pretty big brush for this whole thing. If I was going to take a lot of time on this, I would probably start at some point to use smaller brushes, but that time is not now. Okay. You want to start really nice and rough so that you've got highlights and shadows in the right place first. To me, that just helps me focus on the most important stuff, which is the highlights and shadows, and it helps me avoid getting distracted by the little details. Does that make sense? Okay, how many of you guys have ever gotten distracted with details? And then all of a sudden you like have this part done really, really nice, and then you forget about the whole rest of your painting, right? It happens. We all have been there. Okay, so for right now, I've got the bulk of that in there. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the box, the teal box. Now that green that I'm mixing right now is like really pretty vibrant, so I'm going to use some of that warm yellow to help me dull it down a little bit. Don't be afraid to mute your colors. They are not as bright as you would believe in real life. Okay, so I've got the stripe that comes across this way. That's still way too strong. I've got this part over here, which is way darker. I don't know if you guys can see that. This side is facing away from the light, right? So it's going to be darker and duller. Okay? And then I've got down here. This probably should be more blue. I've got this part that goes behind that object. That brown really needs to extend more. I'll put that in later. Somebody please keep watching the time for me and letting me know.
You're good.
15 minutes yet.
15 minutes left? Okay. Then inside this box is much, much darker. So I'm going to use my purples. To darken that up. Okay, what do you notice about maybe somebody sitting behind me? If you compare my color inside this box to what you see in the actual box, how is the actual box different than mine? Can you tell?
Texture?
The color.
It's more brownish.
Yes, it's way more muted up there. So I probably need to warm that up a little bit. I'll put some warm red in there. See the difference?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, could I go farther with that? Yes, absolutely. Am I going to right now? Nope. Okay, I do need also though some of this brighter green at the bottom. What I want to also pay attention to is, like, I can see in the real thing in real life right here, there are some shadows falling down because that light is coming through the the slots in the box. And then also the color up here is darker than it is down here. Okay, so those kinds of differences are what I want you to pay attention to. So I've got light values down here. Later yet. Okay, and then I've got this color in the background is a little bit lighter here as it goes up that way. get just a tiny little amount of white in there. That difference is probably not picking up on the camera, but that's okay. Doing some negative painting right now. So I'm basically painting the highlights and letting the shadow stay dark, if that makes sense. Okay. I've also got just a little bit of highlight over there. I want to make sure it gets in there because that's going to help to show that dimension. There's a little bit right here also. Okay, so do you see how I'm kind of thinking in blobs?
Yeah.
Blobs of color. And that's how you're going to start. That's how it should start. You'll kind of make it tighter and neater and more detailed kind of as you go. But this is really important part of the process as far as getting your values established. Okay? Wow, my proportions are way, way off. Here's the light part of my orange. That's not really even remotely close to the right color. So I'm looking at from where I'm sitting, the top of this orange is actually more closer to under here, so I probably made this box too short, which makes some sense there. So like I said, my proportions are off because I didn't double check. That's going to have to dry out a little bit before I put the rest of that in. Okay, and then my orange, thinking back to color theory, as it goes down, it's going to get redder. So I'll put some red in down here and blend that back up into that. And then I'll come get some of the yellow from the top. Did anybody catch what I just did with the proportions? Do you see how my brain just took over and was like, See how I rounded this out?
Yep.
Orange is not really that round in real life, right? So you got to watch out for stuff like that. That's why it really, really helps to get your proportions figured out and then to double check your measurements using those angles, because you cannot trust what your brain is going to assume. Okay? And how many still lifes have I done in my lifetime?
A lot.
Many. And I still fall into the same traps. People on the internet are not going to understand your references.
Well, Addams Family.
Watch the commercials.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, we'll have to link them back to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay,
Check
that
the
is too wet and it's not blending well for me, so I am going to use that as a sign that I need to come back to it. Okay, I'm going to let those colors simmer for a second. At this point, before I go back and revamp or refine any of the stuff I've currently done, what I want to get in there is some semblance of background, okay? Because right now, this does not look transparent. Why? Because we're seeing it visually against a white background. Is the background really white? No, it is not. Can somebody get me the 2 yellow paints, please? Because I'm going to need some more of that. I'm going to start with the counter at the bottom. Okay, the counter at the bottom, and if you're working with this counter at all, is a very, very neutral color. We did that by design because we know we make artwork here.
Here you go.
Thank you. Watch me spray it all over myself on the internet.
Nice. Can make
Okay. So I've got some brown counter under there. I'm paying really careful attention to where the shadows are falling, okay? So do you guys see how there's a shadow on this side where it's a little bit darker? because, why is there a shadow here?
Oh, is that a light?
Yep, because the light's coming from this way. So this wooden cubey thing is going to block light from where that is coming from. So that's why that shadow has to be there. The orange is going to cast a shadow. And back here, it's going to look a little bit lighter because the light is actually reaching back there. I kind of like doing the background for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's a really good opportunity to fix all the stuff that you messed up when you did your proportions the first time. Okay, so like if I needed to refine that edge, that's my opportunity to do that. It's also really nice though because it kind of restores your faith in your ability to paint. Because up until that point, things, like I said, they don't look transparent, they don't look reflective, they might not look like you have the right colors. But then once you start putting in that background, it kind of grounds everything and, like I said, restores your faith that you can do this. That's not the right shape shadow at all. So I'm paying attention to what angle the shadow goes at, but then also how does it transition from shadow to not shadow? Is it a hard line? Is it a soft line? Is it rounded? Is it angular? Does that make sense? That painting over there that I did with the tray, that one had a much harder shadow because of how close it was to the light. Whereas this one, they're a little bit softer. This one's got a hard shadow right here, but then a softer one that goes out this way. And I'm not being particularly neat about that. I'm just kind of scrubbing it in there. Because I don't care if it's exactly right now. I just need something in there to approximate what it's going to really be. Because I can go back and refine it. Okay, right here definitely needs to be dark. Right here, there's really no shadow at all, but what's different about mine versus up there right now? Can you tell what I just did right here? Anybody catch it? Is the counter under the pedestal to the crystal ball lighter or darker than the pedestal?
It is lighter.
It is lighter. What does mine look like?
Darker.
Darker. Dun dun dun. Wrong. I was wrong. You were right. Cool thing about paint, which is a little bit less stressful than if you think back to fruit drawing, is if you mess up, you just paint over it. So you don't have to worry quite so much about hitting it on the first try.
4 minutes.
Thank you. Okay, my counter colors don't even really match all the way across, and that's okay. Use a cleaner spot on my palette. That's half my problem. Okay, I gotta pay attention to where the poster board back there intersects with the crystal ball. That got way darker than it was supposed to. This is where the magic's gonna happen.
Is that fun?
Ah, I guess it is. Not intentional. Good catch though.
I didn't know if anybody else caught it.
Enjoy your revenge.
Okay, and that only goes to about here. And then it goes up. Then there's other colors happening back there. Okay, I'm also looking for value differences, right? We know that in real life that poster board is all the same color, but when we squint at it, where is it different? It's lighter down in the lower corner. Yep, lower left, down here. Lighter, lighter, lighter. And then it gradually gets darker as it goes to the upper right. Okay, so those are the differences that you're really going to have to stop and ask yourself. And then once you establish them, ask yourself if in your painting it's actually doing that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Now are you starting to see,
The warp.
okay, where that's happening? Now I need to go back into that and adjust. So I can see for me, it's darker down here as it goes up and across. And then up here it's lighter. Now there's some dimensions starting to happen in there. Now I can come back with my really light, really intense yellow color. Right here. Refine that edge. There's a little bit of that tan though that just comes like that. Did you see how that just made it jump out?
Yeah.
Okay. It's much darker down here. In fact, there's a really dark section right here. You know, you're all like freaking out now. Don't be afraid to take risks, people. Did you see how I took that dark and I put it in a couple other spots? Why did I do that? When I repeat something, it helps it feel more uniform, balanced, like it belongs. Thank you. I need this back here to be darker now. See how on mine the crystal ball and the background on that right side is blending in?
Yeah.
But on the poster board, it's not. Yep. So I've got to darken that. That's the same color. That doesn't help at all.
Let's go over here.
There we go.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was very confused on because I was over on the other side, so I was very confused
About this?
about the colors. Yeah.
Does it make sense now?
Yeah.
Good. Thank you guys.
Brady Miller, Haley Dable, Lacey Theobald, Cameron Ritter, Amanda Linskins, Abby Grundeman, Garrett Wendorf, Lexi Witterwald, Cheaton Schupelt, Paige Skidor, Hannah Schultz, Brandon Schmidt. To the office, please.
Do you want me to leave it recording?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye. Hey, Louis.
Where do you get? Not bad at all.
How's it going?
Pretty good.
Good. Gotta curve that more.
I just wore jerseys. They didn't really care. I didn't do anything Sweatpants are even grosser. Oh, you get if you wear sweatpants in public, you'd give it up. It was really hot. Astonished
And it's just so like it means so much to all of us. So it's like just
Take 5 minutes in your sketchbooks, please.
every time we sing it, I get oh, she's in the back.
I'm back here. If you want to come see what I'm doing, come on over. The camera's recording, so I'm trying to finish. Should be darker down there. All right. Good enough for now.